Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hello everyone, this is Sam Gupta. I am principal at ElevatIQ and founder and host at WBSRocks. You are listening to the New Warehouse podcast, and today's safety tip is be careful of your forklifts. You should treat them the way you should be treating anything in the real world, which means follow the guidelines of the road safety, and you can save a lot of injuries inside the warehouse.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by the super connector of LinkedIn. I mean, every platform that's out there, I don't know, Clubhouse, Twitter, everything, you name it, he is there. Sam Gupta, he is the principal consultant at ElevatIQ. And he's also the founder and host of WBSRocks, which is a podcast and networking community for the ERP community, supply chain community, basically everything that touches supply chain. I mean, people are involved there, and he's built this up over the last year or so, and it's been pretty incredible to see. He certainly, also pushed me to get more involved in networking and online and things of this nature. I don't know when he sleeps at all, because I constantly seeing posts from him on every platform. He's everywhere. He's out there. But he also does ElevatIQ, which is a ERP consulting company and focuses in on ERP. So we're going to hear some background on him. How did he get to this point in his life where he's part of ElevatIQ and also creating this WBSRocks. And he's going to give us some information on ERP, some ERP basics, and how it impacts the warehousing and distribution side of the business. So, Sam, I've been on your show, and now it's your turn on my show. So how are you?
I am very good. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. You know that how much I appreciate you and love your work. So I'm super excited to be on your show.
Definitely. I'm happy to get you on, and we can exchange guest spots and things of that nature. I really enjoyed being on your show back when you're just starting, and now it's crazy. You're at this point. You put out so many episodes and so much content. It's really useful content as well. You're not just putting out content just to put out content. It's really meaningful and pointed, and I think the community, and I know I really appreciate it as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about about your background and I guess how you got to be a part of ElevatIQ and kind of got into this ERP space that you're in now.
Yeah, so I'll make it real quick because I've been doing this for 20 years. So I think it could be slightly longer. So in terms of background, I grew up in a very manufacturing and distribution centric environment. That was my family. Then I did my engineering. Again, I never wanted to be an engineer as such, but did that and then got into the Fortune 500 consulting. That's where I met our friend called ERP. And we did a lot of different digital transformation, anything and everything touching ERP in many different industries. So that was for about roughly 10 to 12 years. And after that, I started exploring the startup space because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because my family background is that. So I was always sort of, playing out with the ideas the way you are doing your side gigs, I guess. I was doing the same thing while working in Fortune 500 world, but then decided to go. So did that for roughly 4 or 5 years, experimented on a lot of different ideas that were not part of my core. So you talk about ideas ranging from medical device to real estate startups to I don't know how many different industries. Okay. None of them worked. And then finally we decided, okay, you know what? This is time to focus on my core, which was the ERP. It was sort of the manufacturing distribution. This is what I understand. This is what I know. So we started focusing on that as part of ElevatIQ. It's been roughly 5 years. We have been doing that. But then, during COVID, we had to figure out how to survive because in the first 4 to 5 years, we didn't have to worry as much, to be honest. We were getting enough business. We didn't have to worry about marketing. But then with COVID, all the existing contracts, got canceled. We were not getting any new business. So we had to figure out, okay, what to do to build that thought leadership. And that's where this whole idea of WBSRocks came. We were producing a lot of content on our blog, but then that was not enough to build the thought leadership. So we really wanted to get into the podcasting game. And our competitors were really behind overall in the podcast. They were far ahead on blog, on YouTube. So we thought, you know what, we have a real play here and we wanted to be ahead. And that's why we were putting all our money in the podcasting game. And that's why we all started. It's been a crazy journey overall in last 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. And you pumped out so much content, I think. So you said it's been 6 months?
Roughly 6 to 8 months. We did a lot of prep before launching. So roughly, I would say for 2 to 3 months, we were recording a lot before launching. So we launched roughly in December last year. And since then, I think we are at 93 episodes right now on the podcast. Wow. And we already have we have backlog for 2 months right now. It's all scheduled, it's all done and so. So it's crazy amount of content for sure.
Yeah. And it's been awesome to see your growth as well. I think, you reached out to me, I guess, when you were just in the research phase and figuring out how you're going to do this and all this stuff. And, I was kind of like, oh, who is this guy? And, to see you just develop into this like networking and connecting machine has been pretty remarkable. So I mean, definitely, congratulations to you on being able to build this up over the last couple months and really kind of, I guess, taking the challenges of COVID and not letting it get you down and getting creative with it. And I think that's, you mentioned, becoming an entrepreneur and all that stuff. And that's kind of what it's all about. It's like scratching that itch, right? And trying to figure out all the different ways to knock down those challenges and push through.
Yeah. And I am always watching, people like you, Kevin. I mean, you are very good at networking, producing content. I'm trying to catch up with you. So it's always a journey together, I guess, for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great journey to be on together as well. So now let's talk a little bit about ERP, because that's your expertise, as you said. You said, let me go back to my core. Let me focus on what I know. So I guess tell us, let's start off with the basics, right? So, the audience, we're focused in on, the warehousing distribution side of things. So there's a lot of acronyms floating around, right? Especially in the supply chain space as a whole. You got ERP, WMS, WES, WCS, it just goes on and on and on. SAP, they even threw an acronym for their acronym system, right? So, tell us, I guess, high level, basic, what is ERP?
So there are a lot of different perspectives that you can look at, what an ERP is, and a lot of people don't understand that. So one of the things, let's break it down, the acronym, right? So
Right.
ERP really stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. To be honest, I mean, it's more of the marketing term. It was designed to be more of the cash term. That has been there for the last, 40 years. I think SAP coined that. Everybody sort of likes because it's an easy way to think that, once I buy an ERP, my life is going to be set. I don't have to do anything else because I have an ERP. But that's not how ERP systems work. ERP systems are designed for specific business processes. They are designed for a specific goal. The reason why companies typically fail with ERP is because they are trying to either over-engineer that ERP system or they are simply trying to do something that it is not designed to do. Now, let's break it down on some of the other acronyms that you typically hear. That is going to be, especially when you are talking about the WMS business.
Right.
WMS for distribution business. So typically, ERP is going to give you the core for a business. But then you are going to have specialized needs for other departments. For example, when we talk about distribution business, your accounting could be fairly basic overall. You don't need a sophisticated ERP system to be able to do your accounting or finance, all of that. For distribution, warehouse and inventory is going to be a core. In fact, warehouse is probably going to have far greater need than your actual inventory, even though they all need to be talking to each other. So when we think about the definition of ERP, it's the core platform to give you the basic functionality for your business, but it may fall short in a specialized need of specific department, and that's where you are going to need these specialized systems, such as your WMS, such as your CRM. You may hear things like HCM, that is the specialized system for your HR department. Now you might have a specialized system for your finance, which is called CPM. So there might be too many systems. An organization typically require at least 4 to 5 systems in general. If you have larger corporation, then they might require 15, 30, depending upon how complex they are, depending upon how fragmented they are. Your goal should always be to buy one system, okay? Because that is always easy from the implementation perspective. The more you get into the boundary of 2 systems, that's when the problem occurs because these systems are not going to be talking to each other. If you try to integrate them, then that becomes an ERP project in itself, and you will never have the seamless experience that you are going to get with one system. But that is very rarely possible. For example, let's say talk about your distribution business or the e-commerce business. I mean, for e-commerce, you definitely need an e-commerce portal. If you try to do this in ERP, you won't be in business, I'm telling you. So you need an e-commerce system for the e-commerce, most likely WMS, because they are very heavy in the warehouse processes as well. And then you need an ERP. So on average, you require roughly 2 to 3 different systems overall. So I don't know if I did a good job of describing the ERP. This is one perspective. The other perspective, now that perspective could be comparable for the WMS system as well, but typically this comes from the management philosophy. It is buy versus build. This is especially helpful for the development community. And the reason why it is really helpful is they have sort of this binary way of thinking that, if you are buying an ERP, why are you buying an ERP? Can you not build this? If you try to build something that is already built, that has been tested at least 5 to 10,000 times, you are getting a real intellectual property. Okay? This thing already works. So the only thing you need to do is you simply need to implement it. If you actually try to do everything that the ERP community has already done, oh my goodness, you have no idea what you are trying to get into. So this whole philosophy of buy versus build, when you are, let's say, a manufacturing company or a distribution company, your goal is going to be, if you are a distribution, you are simply buying stuff and you are selling stuff.
Right.
You are never sort of building. Some distribution companies might do a little bit of kitting, may do like manufacturing. But again, that's very rare. So this is the whole concept of buy versus build, even in the software community. So when you are buying an ERP, you are buying a completely tested product versus building it yourself.
Right. So it sounds like you're recommending buy.
I don't recommend anything. What I recommend is look at your business processes, look at what is available in the market. If you can find something off the shelf, then that is always going to have lower risk as compared to building it. Okay? When you have to build, you are typically building your unique processes. And sometimes when we look at the market, those unique processes may not be as unique because that could be the complexity that you have carried over the period of time, and you never standardize your business process. You may call yourself unique, but you are not necessarily unique because that is the complexity that does not add any sort of business value to your business. So first thing what you need to do is you need to simplify your business. Okay, the more you simplify, the more you will be ready for scale. And if you still have some of the unique elements, I'll give you some example of those unique elements. For some industry, let's say if you talk about the electronics industry, and now I don't know electronics distribution industry, for example. I don't know how things work in New Jersey, but we in Canada here, we have the provincial rule that if you are shipping any electronic goods in any specific provinces, then you are supposed to prepare a sort of the tax receipt that this is how much I have shipped in a specific province, and you owe this much to the government. So you need to have some sort of report. Now, you are not going to find this report in the ERP. So you need to build this because this is very specific to your industry. So this is the right use case to build a functionality in your ERP system. Now, if you use that as a driver to buy an ERP system, most likely you are going to select an ERP system that is going to be either too niche, or it may not work, or it might be from a vendor that may have sold to 5 different companies and they might be bankrupt tomorrow. So you always need to look at the use case in terms of, okay, which is the right use case that is going to be fit for buy, which is the right use case that is going to be fit for build, and you need to build your solution architecture, enterprise architecture, business architecture before you implement any system for that matter.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good advice, and I think it was a really good example with the tax receipt as well as versus something that you're going to have to focus on building because it's unique to maybe the locale that you're in or where you're located or something of that nature. And so very interesting. And as you mentioned, the ERP can cover many aspects of the business, right? So I'm curious, specifically for those that are listening, and maybe they're in the operations side of things, distribution side of things, and they're hearing these rumblings through the company, like, oh, maybe we're getting an ERP, or maybe we're getting a new ERP or something, or we're going to switch to a new system. What I guess specific impacts does it have on the warehouse distribution side of the business, and what should those people from the operations side be looking to ensure that the ERP will take care of it and cover?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
So number one, your WMS most likely may not work if it is not integrated with the ERP, because you definitely need the financial data. For warehouse, for WMS to be able to work, the WMS needs to be integrated with an ERP. Now, if you go 20 years back or 10 years back maybe, right? None of the ERP systems really had the WMS component built as part of the ERP. Right. So that's why we had these two separate boxes. But now with cloud and with the technology, the lower end of ERP systems are building a lot of WMS functionality right inside the ERP system. But is that going to be good enough for each warehouse? No. Definitely not. And the reason for that is because warehouse has a very specific need overall. There are a lot of different business processes that are really designed for the warehouse. In fact, see, if you look at the warehouse architecture, if you're going to host everything inside your ERP, it's probably not going to work. For example, I'll tell you things like, if you're looking purely from the operations perspective, you need some of the KPIs, such as cost per pick. You're not going to get that in ERP. ERP is not designed for that unless you are looking at very narrowly focused ERP that is never installed in the manufacturing situation. For the most part, the majority of the ERP systems you are going to have, they are going to have their costing done the way the manufacturing is done, the way the rest of the world works. That's how they have done their systems and processes. So you are definitely going to use the basic financial module of the ERP. But when you talk about the core warehouse process, now, if you are talking about basic process, pick, pack, ship, anybody can do that. Okay, the majority of the basic the ERP systems, if they have the WMS component, can do that. If you have light WMS component, they might be able to do that. But when you talk about the sophisticated processes, when you talk about understanding, okay, how am I doing in terms of my overall real estate? Okay, do I have metrics for those? Do I have metrics for my safety? Do I have metrics for the integration that I am doing with my robots? Can I do, let's say right now, if you look at things like batch picking that you can probably do in a lot of smaller end of the WMS systems.
Right.
I don't know if they support zone picking, but let's say if you're looking for things like visualization of the warehouse, you are not going to find that in the lower end of your WMS system or the ERP system. Now, if you talk about the logistics side of things, none of the ERP systems really support those processes. So the challenges that we see in the market is what they are doing is they are going to buy an ERP and they are going to build the entire WMS and the TMS functionality in the ERP. Can you believe this? Okay. And then we get into the engagement. For example, I am working on the engagement right now. And what they did is they bought an ERP. The ERP was never designed for that specific industry because the industry is very different. And I'm talking about wine distribution industry. It's very unique the way it works. Right. Even the way their purchase orders are going to look, the way they actually warehouse, the way they inventory, it's just completely different. It's not a food business. Okay, so if the person who is actually implementing the ERP, if they don't necessarily understand the nuances of the wine distribution business, what they are going to end up doing is they are going to waste client money because the system is never going to work. They are never going to have the lot traceability in the system. And then, it's going to be probably $1 million ERP failure. You all have heard those stories. I can almost.
Oh, yeah.
So engagements like this, when you have things like, super complex processes from the warehouse perspective, from the TMS perspective, from your ERP perspective, you really need to know which system is going to be right fit for which specific process, and then create an architecture. The architecture is where the real game is, and you need a person who understand multiple systems. They understand these systems deeply. They understand how your systems are going to interact. The way, if you look at the organizational structure, when we create the HR organization, we are saying, okay, here's my CEO, here's my CFO, here's my VP of Ops, and we are designing, okay, how these guys are going to work together. Otherwise, they are simply going to be fighting with each other. Right. This is how you should be thinking about the business architecture, the enterprise architecture, the solution architecture, and find appropriate systems in the architecture. Otherwise, you are going to end up in the similar situation as we are dealing right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the analogy to the actual org structure of the company and how if it's not aligned correctly, there's just going to be butting heads basically. And that's what you're going to run into in the different modules or different systems that you have in place. So it's very interesting to hear it because I think that, and I've certainly been through integrations and upgrades and changes to systems and, you mentioned the $1 million failures. Luckily, I was not part of a total failure, but I've certainly been present for not being able to ship anything for a week or 2 weeks. And I will tell you, it's not a fun time. So, yeah, I appreciate you explaining kind of the involvement on the warehouse and distribution side, and kind of some of the nuances that you may not find present in an ERP system, and the things that you can expect to maybe have some challenges with, or at least have something that you need to be able to build a little bit on, especially to get that functionality. And I love that you mentioned in there the organization of the orchestration, I guess, of the robotics and the automation also that's going on. And most ERPs are not capable of handling that and being able to get those metrics that you're looking for from those things. So I mean, I think that's really an important point to take away and be able to think about that when you go into one of these projects, especially because, I say, so, certainly, so there's some silos, especially when it comes to the warehouse side of things, distribution side of things. They like to keep us in the dark sometimes when they're making these big decisions for the company and things, even though we're the ones actually getting the product out the door, right? But, that's another story. Anyway, so, but yeah, I mean, I think, it's really great because, I'm sure that, operations, we may hear these like the ERP floating around, and then, the other big thing that comes into play, which you mentioned the word a couple of times here, is, that big I word, which is the implementation, right? And implementation is certainly, I just mentioned I've been a part of a couple of them, and I mentioned we had one where we didn't ship for almost 2 weeks, which is, terribly scary. If you're just on a whole business level, can't get product to your customers, what are you really doing? So implementation, can be such a scary thing and a scary word. So I'm curious, from your experience and, your knowledge and things of that nature, why, I guess, do you think implementations, I guess, have this initial reputation of being so scary, and how do you think you get people to maybe not be so scared of the implementation and have it go a little easier than what they may be expecting?
So I'm actually going to start this with, you always have sort of the journey. So I always like to compare implementation with, when you are getting married for the first time, if you're lucky in the first shot, then you are probably not going to have any problems.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are not lucky, right? And the reason for that is there is huge misalignment overall in the expectation. But if you ask somebody, what are the odds of getting successful in the second marriage? I can almost guarantee this, The second marriage, you are going to be far likely to be successful in second marriage, because now you have had some sort of experience. Now your expectations are aligned. And by the way, one more point there. If one person has been married twice and the other person has been married once, this person is going to understand far better overall the nuances of the marriage, and this person is still going to have misalignment in the expectation. So now compare this scenario with the person. Let's say if both of these people have been married twice, I can almost guarantee this. This marriage is going to be super successful. Right. Now compare that with your ERP. When you are buying the ERP for the first time, everybody thinks that, ERP is just a product from Home Depot. I'm going to put it, I'm going to, install in my warehouse, and it's going to magically work. The first process, again, when we think about the technical implementation, it's almost like building your house. You don't simply take a house and just put it somewhere and start living and have fun. It doesn't work that way. You need to draw the blueprint of your house. You need to first think, what house do you want to live in before you find a solution that is going to help with the house. In case of an ERP, the major problem that most businesses have, especially if they are getting married for the first time, they don't understand their own business. They don't have any sort of documentation of the processes. So when we get involved in these implementations, typically what we have to do, hey, you need the payment term, go there. There is a stack of paper that you need to go and find what are the payment terms that you need to configure in your ERP. That's how well documented their processes are. So now you can imagine, right? These guys have never sort of put the structure in the business. Any design, any manufacturing, any R&D, any software development require some sort of structure before you can put a formula around it. An ERP is an algorithm. It's a software. It's a formula. You cannot design a software around some random things.
Right.
You can run the business manually, randomly as much as you want, because human brains, the way they are designed, they can deal with a lot of chaos. But if you don't want to deal with chaos in your company, the first thing that you need to do is you need to standardize your processes. Okay, you need to go easy on yourself, on your employees. You need to simplify the business processes. Then you need to find the ideal architecture. And I like to emphasize on the business architecture. The business architecture term is very different from your technical architecture. In case of business architecture, you are not thinking about ERP, WMS, all of that. What you are thinking about is, hey, here is my customer data. Here's my vendor data. It has nothing to do with, whether you are buying SAP or any other solutions out there. You are building a structure. You are building a bridge, and you are trying to find out, okay, what is the ideal way of building my architecture? So once you have all of that down, once you have your customers, let's say, structure identified, once you have your vendor, once you have your inventory identified, then you figure out, okay, what are the pieces that I need to bring in? If you are the e-commerce organization, most likely you need the e-commerce system right there. Okay, everybody needs an ERP, unless you are living on an accounting system, and there is always a debate whether accounting system is ERP or not. Let's say if you are a small organization, you can probably live off of QuickBooks. So let's say if you have QuickBooks for a very small organization, you have Shopify or whatever. Then let's say if you have very small warehouse, you don't have any sort of automation, you don't have barcode reader, then you don't have to worry about anything. But still, even in the smaller organization, you still have to figure out your business architecture. Right. And when I say business architecture, what that means is, okay, who is going to have source of authority for your customers? Who is going to have source of authority for your vendors? How is that interaction is going to work? So compare and contrast this with your organizational structure again. Okay, whether you are a one-person company or 500 people company, right, you require an organizational structure. You need to figure out who's going to be the CEO, what is going to be the role of the CEO, who's going to be the CFO, what is going to be their roles and responsibilities. Systems work the same way. Whether you are one-person organization or 5 people organization, you need to figure out which system is going to be doing what. And this is where people just think that this is my black box. This, you IT guy, you figure out, what I need to do. And then the IT guy comes, because IT guys don't necessarily have as depth in the business, right? Now, 2 things you could do. Either you can teach them the entire business, which is nearly impossible because there are so many things that you have to learn, or you can learn IT. Both of those things are nearly impossible. So that's why you hire, consultants, because they go to 1,000 different shops and they look at a lot of different businesses. So one of the things that they are bringing to the table is going to be the best practices. They are going to teach you how to do business. Okay. And that's where the real key is in simplifying the implementation, in saving that implementation. And if you are not building those best practices, sometimes your consultants are going to say, you know what? You should be using only 5 payment terms. And now you are going to, no. That's not how we work. Okay. we always have worked this way in the last 30 years. Now you are trying to change my business? Yes, because if I don't change, number one, your ERP implementation is going to cost you $1 million. And I have no idea whether that is going to be successful or not. Okay. So these are the nuances that we look at. Now, this is a very simple example. It could be simplifying your customer structure. I was having one conversation with one guy who actually sold his manufacturing company. He was at roughly, at around $100 million. Okay. He used to build the truck trailers. And when he started, his company was very interesting, right? They used to sell pretty much anything and everything. Once they reached at roughly $50 million point, at that point, their life was hell. Their managers simply wanted to quit because the number of decisions that they had to make on a daily basis was a nightmare. The person was saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to grow anymore from this point, or I'm quitting. I'm just leaving. Okay. So what these guys did is, to be able to survive, to sleep at night, they had to simplify. They had to kill their 80% of the products. Can you believe this? Now, this is going to come across as a shock to a lot of e-commerce merchants or the distributor. Hey, are you sure what you're talking about? Do you really want me to kill these products that I've been, carrying? Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have a great point there. But I think the other thing is it's such a challenge, I think, from the mental standpoint to be able to make those types of decisions. Because like you said, there's the mindset of, we've been doing this this way for 30 years, and, it's never been a problem. Right. But simplifying, I think, is a good thing. And I think that, creating that business structure is the right thing to do before you go for any implementation, whether it's ERP or anything other than that. Because, I think back, as you're saying that about, I had a conversation with CEO of Raymond Forklifts I had on the show before, and I always remember he said, you can automate if you want, but if you don't optimize and standardize before you automate, well, then you're just making a bad process faster.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think it's along the same lines. I mean, and there's going to be change, and I think one of the reasons you're going to implement something is because you want to change and you want to grow, you want to get better. So like you said, if somebody comes in, you have a consultant that's going to suggest like, okay, you need to make this change, then you should probably listen to them, right?
Yeah, and on change, I guess, my comment is going to be, figure out how to go in easy steps, because the less change you have, even if it could be just replacing a system, you don't want to go overboard with, you have to figure out how to create a logical slice in your implementation. Sometimes I'll give you some examples of how you can do that, so that's probably beneficial for the audience. For example, let's say if you are implementing an ERP, you don't have to implement WMS right away. You can probably skip that if you like. For example, let's say you don't have to automate the barcode right away. Now, you might be thinking that the reason why I'm installing ERP is because I actually wanted to have my barcode. I get it. But what you need to do is you need to take baby steps when it comes to change. Okay, you cannot replace the barcode first, because first what you need to do is you need to figure out the foundation before you can build the roof.
Right.
I know that your goal is to get the roof, but unless you have the foundation, there's no way to get to the roof. So yes, so on change, what my advice is going to be, figure out how to do that logical, incremental change that is not going to be like learning a new language. Because when somebody is implementing, irrespective of whether you are implementing an ERP or WMS, doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. When you have to go through the 5-hour of course, and these guys have never, let's say, used an ERP before, all of a sudden you are asking them to use an ERP and they are going to go nuts. Your products are not going to be shipped. Your orders are going to be late, and you are going to have tons and tons of problem. And then you are going to blame that ERPs don't work.
Right.
ERPs don't work because there is a method to it. There is a method to the way we perceive change, the way we work as humans. So that's our limitation. It's not the limitation of the technology.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good point is, you got to kind of, I guess, like conform in a sense a little bit to the way that the system wants to work to get it to work all the way. Because, I certainly dealt with ERP, and I was involved in a switch over from Oracle to SAP. And I think the initial shock with SAP for a lot of people was how rigid it is, right? Like, there's no real like workarounds or anything like that, where previously like they had been able to kind of like, I guess like you were mentioning, build some things or do some modifications and to do these workarounds, and they could like, get around this and that. But SAP is like was very like cut and dry. Like, it's either this or it's this. And so, I think it's really good advice and really good insights from you, Sam, on ERP as a whole and also implementation. So I'm curious, before we wrap up here, you mentioned that, ERP has changed kind of in the last 20 years and, started to integrate some other elements of systems throughout the supply chain, the process as a whole. Do you think from your perspective, and I guess what you know from being like so involved in the industry through your networking and everything, what direction do you think the ERP industry is heading in for the future?
So, 2 or 3 things that we are noticing at this point of time, and a lot of these things you don't even notice. There are a lot of comments in the community. They just feel that ERP systems are so rigid, they're so outdated. They never update. The only thing they are trying to do is they are trying to earn license, and they are not really investing in the R&D. My small SaaS app here is so cool. So okay, So number one, the ERP systems are very financially oriented systems. The biggest priority for them is to comply with the regulations. If they are not complying, somebody goes to jail. Nobody wants to go to jail. So that is the biggest priority, and that you are probably not even going to see.
Right.
Okay? Because you don't know what is happening in the background. The only thing you care for is, if I'm not able to ship my good, hey, tell me what is happening in the background. That's your problem. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
So ERP systems like to prioritize the feature set based on the compliance, based on the regulations. That is always the first priority. That's where their biggest dollars are always going. Now, the second perspective, if you look at the evolution, and you have no idea how much R&D is happening in the ERP community at this point of time, including some of the rigid systems that you are talking about, they are rigid for a reason. They are rigid because they are trying to provide you the financial control that you need, the integrity that you need in data, so that you don't run into the issues. The more control the system has, the less problems you are going to face as an organization. It has nothing to do with ERP. It's just, if you are going to use a loose system, you are going to have far more problems. So two areas. Number one is going to be really the regulations and compliance. That's where the majority of the R&D is. ERP systems are also investing in a lot of AI that you are never going to see. You don't even feel. Okay, you are simply going to say that, you know what? ERP systems from 1980s, they are far more difficult to use. Yeah. ERP systems from 2021 are far easier to use. The reason why they are easier to use is because they are trying to learn the way you work. Okay, and they are trying to guide you in the process, because the learning that process is extremely difficult for everyone. So there is a lot of innovation happening from the technology perspective. There's a lot of AI that is being embedded in every single workflow that you have, and it's not just one ERP system. Every vendor out there is investing a lot of money in R&D. Right. One of the other things that you are going to experience is now implementation. We have already discussed this. None of the vendors, it doesn't matter which vendor you go for, none of the vendors want any businesses to fail or implementations to fail. They fail because of the misalignment in the expectations. The way, just because you have too many people involved, it's just politics. Okay, that's why. It has nothing to do with the vendor or the technology. So what these vendors are trying to do from the technology perspective or trend perspective, they are trying to create the fully integrated system. Okay, that's why now what you are seeing, the lower end of the systems have, let's say, the WMS component integrated as part of the ERP. They are telling you that, okay, take the pre-baked integration, because otherwise somebody else is going to integrate, it's not going to work, and you are going to blame that SAP does not work or some other vendors don't work. Yeah. So what they are trying to do is they are trying to provide you the pre-baked functionality, and that is the key there, so that you don't have to develop yourself. Because software development, when you look at the software, it needs to do three things. Number one is going to be your code. Number two is going to be documentation. Number three is going to be your deployment. Okay. Typically, people feel that, you know what, I've got my laptop, I can code, I can write an enterprise software. No. The most difficult part always is going to be the documentation. Okay, when you have two people involved in the software, that's where the complexity is. When you have 2,000 people involved in the software, that's where the complexity is. So fully baked integration is the second trend that we are seeing. Industry-focused functionality. So now what each of the ERP systems, everybody is pretty much trying to build the industry functionality. So again, you don't run into the same issue where you go to a specific industry and then you are literally trying to create the ERP for that specific industry. So now these OEMs, what they are trying to do is they are trying to provide the pre-baked industry functionality. That's where the R&D dollars are going. The last one is going to be user experience. You have no idea how much investment is being made right now in improving user experience. Really? Okay. So they are investing a lot of dollars. I would say the last, which is closely related to user experience, a lot of applications out there, they are not fully migrated to cloud native. And when I say cloud native, there is a reason why they are called cloud native, because these are the systems that you can use on your mobile phones. These are the systems that they are going to have all the benefits of cloud. There are a lot of systems that are calling themselves as cloud, but they are not cloud native. Cloud native is a very specific development methodology. It uses modern technology. The older system, even if they migrate to the cloud native architecture, it's going to be really hard. So they are still working on that. So right now you have half of the code base that is going to be cloud native, and half of the code is going to be super legacy, and your experience is not going to be as good. And you are going to feel that, the system does not work. So those are my 5 or 6 in terms of the trend that we are seeing in the ERP industry.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I like the last trend of the user experience, because I think that's like so important, especially as, we've seen, I guess, the look of things and everything just, can get a little dated. And, one of the big challenges of, getting, I guess, younger professionals and students coming out of school and university and stuff, wanting to be in this space and being in supply chain space is, the interest. And, I think, you come in and, you look at one of these, black screens with like green font, blue font on it or something, is like, what is this? What did I just walk into? Like, did I just go back in time almost? Like, if you're, a younger person. So, the fact that they're focusing on the user experience and making the technology, a little more friendly in a sense, I think that's more what the newer generations are accustomed to, especially as we look at smartphones and tablets and all these things that they're using. Everything is like so beautiful and sleek. Transitioning to that for the workplace, not only makes it easier for them to use, but probably in a sense it makes them more comfortable and easier to adapt to using these different technologies as well. So I think that's a really good thing to be on the horizon and be looking out for. So Sam, we're definitely going to be in touch with you, and you got your finger on the pulse for ERP. So you are the ERP guy, the go-to guy for ERP. So I mentioned all these things that you're involved in the beginning of the show. So why don't you take a second and tell the audience, how can people get in touch with you? I mean, maybe the question is, how could they not get in touch with you? You're everywhere. So, so why don't you take a second and, tell them about, how they can get in touch with you, how they can find out more about ElevatIQ, and also how can they get into WBSRocks community?
Yeah, as you have mentioned, it's very hard not to notice me, especially if you are on social media. I'm pretty much everywhere, whether you talk about, especially the business communities. LinkedIn, you can reach me as Sam, S-A-M, G-U-P-T-A, last name Gupta. If you look up the WSM Gupta WBSRocks on LinkedIn, just send me a connection request. I'm always willing to meet anybody and everybody. So don't hesitate in contacting me on LinkedIn. I am present on Twitter. The web URL is WBS.rocks. It's super easy. It's just WBS.ROCKS. If you fill out the contact form, one of my team members will help you get in touch with me. And then, the other URL is ElevatIQ, ELEVAT. There's no E at the end, IQ.com. Contact form again. And my team will help you get in touch with you.
Awesome. So, Sam, we will put links to all of that stuff at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so listeners can find it very easily. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And, I'm sure we will have you on the show again in the future to find out what's going on in the ERP world. So thank you again for coming on The New Warehouse.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.